Yo, what's going on everyone? It's Brian and Jim here with DrinkABeerandPlayAGame. Today we're checking out Shadowrun for the Xbox 360. God damn, I really wish they would have just put another word after this game. I'm so tired of just saying Shadowrun!
Released in 2007, this was developed by Fast Interactive and published by Microsoft. It was an Xbox 360 exclusive, but it was also a launch title for games with Windows Live, and ooh, we all know how that turned out. Anyway, this is basically set in the Shadowrun universe. More Shadowrun heavy people complain about it, but as far as we know, it seems to fit. And it's the only Shadowrun first-person shooter, so let's see how it turned out. Graphically, I guess it's not the worst looking game in the world, and for its time it was fine. It doesn't just do anything special. A lot of the character avatars are really samey outside of the different races. The levels themselves they kind of vary between the level of detail and color that's there. Some look pretty vibrant and some look really dull. When you're in the training screens, like when the camera's panning around you, there's some weird almost screen tearing around your avatar itself in the aiming reticule, which always kind of irked me, but I mean, it kind of reminds me, I guess, if you want to go with the year it came out in, it reminds me more of Perfect Dark Zero than it does Halo 3. Brian gave it a 6, I gave it a 5. It's about as average as you're going to get for the time. And as far as beers go, I'll add 1 beer for that weird screen tearing. The sound package overall is adequate. You get a little bit of voice acting in the game during the training sessions, and the sound effects are, I guess you can say, minimal, but they apply to... There's different sounds for the magic, there's different sounds for each type of gun, so they work. It's just kind of there. The music in the background's more
elevator music!
Yeah, more elevator music, a lot of ambient noise. It's nothing memorable at all. So, what can I say? It's slightly above average. Nothing really takes away from the game, so we both gave it 6s. As far as beers go, I'll give it 2 beers. And fuck it, they're both for that elevator music. Give it something memorable.
The controls in this game, like most games, are kind of odd to talk about if you've never played it. But if anyone listening to this video has played any first-person shooter, especially around the time of Halo 3, there's certain controls you almost expect and are used to at this point on the 360. This game does a few tweaks that just don't feel that intuitive and add a really large learning curve to a game that should not be this complicated. Similar to Counter-Strike, you have a purchasing menu, which allows you to buy new weapons, tech, and magic spells. Once you buy these spells, you have to map them out on your buttons, which is really what uses your triggers, more specifically, your bumper buttons and your left trigger. Now this would be fine, except it just gets really annoying and sometimes you'll accidentally hit it because this is one of those unfortunate games that doesn't allow you to aim down sights with your weapons. Other than that, you do, for the D-pad, they offer things to like report orders to your players, but let's face it, in a game like this, you're never going to use it. So we just felt it would have been much more simplistic to just be able to select your power or tech or what have you, and just have one of the bumpers be used for that, and then use a wheel to go through there. I know it's not making a lot of sense, but like we said, when you play this game, it's highly advisable you go through the demo, because if you just try and go into a friggin' match, if there's any available, if the servers are still up, you're probably going to get smoked, because you have to learn those powers, and it takes a little getting used to. With all that being said, we both gave it a 7. Because of that learning curve and just the unintuitive nature of the game, it's nowhere near perfect, but after about an hour or two and you get used to it, it's like most things in this world, you learn to live with it. And as far as beer, I'm going to add just 1 because, hell, this control was way more complicated than it needed to be. So as Jim alluded to earlier, this game isn't set in the official Shadowrun timeline, but it's more or less an alternative to the timeline that everyone from the tabletop and the early Genesis and Super NES games are used to. This one focuses more around this Mayan calendar where the magic is more cyclical and returns every 5,000 years. So it actually takes place in Brazil. Once again, you have a corporation who's basically trying to harness this power known as RNA Global, and they're just fighting the resistance. So you have a whole 2 whopping different type of teams you can be. Within those teams, you can choose from different races, all within the Shadowrun universe that you're used to, such as humans, elves, orcs, and dwarves. Each one has their own special abilities and unique features, as you would expect from the Shadowrun universe, but other than 1 or 2 little different attributes, they're essentially the same. And as I mentioned with the menu screen, you can kind of build out your character however you like. If you want them to be really tech heavy and have additional equipment or jumping abilities, you can. If you want magic, then you have to use your essence, which we've talked about in other videos, and you essentially can call minions forward or throw out the tree of life or tree of healing, whatever the fuck it's called. Or you can just go good old-fashioned FPS and get better and better weapons. Either way, it does give you some chances to feel like you're customizing your character, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't a well flushed out idea, and it's so unfortunate the game has no real single player campaign. It's just a shitty little training mode, and then it's just full on multiplayer. Probably one of the earliest examples of console-based multiplayer only games we've seen. So with that being said, I gave it a 6, Jim gave it a 5. I'm actually one of those people that could just play against computers and have fun if the game offers me enough fun. Jim, he just felt it was really average. And as far as beer, I'm only going to add 2 because this sucked so bad for Jim and I that we really wish they could have flushed this idea out.
Originality we can keep basically quick because Bri touched on most of it already.
That's what she said!
What?
Get it? Bri touched on most of it already.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
Got him! Jim, do me
What?
Do me one favor. Think about it.
Great, we're bringing that back. Wonderful. Anyway, Bri already touched on most... God, why I said it again. Either way, some of the topics that I was going to get to have already been discussed by Brian. There we go. Alright, it's not the first console-based arena shooter. We've already had ports of Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament. We eventually got a port of Team Fortress 2, which is basically the go-to for this kind of game. I like the mapping system for the powers. It's decently unique, especially for a console shooter. It's the only console-based Shadowrun first-person shooter. There's not a lot here. We gave it 4s. There's enough here that isn't completely unoriginal, but you've seen a lot of it before. And as far as beers go, I'll give it 1 beer for...
Brian already touching it?
Sure, for Brian already touching it.
The replayability is really simple here. It's a multiplayer game, so it automatically gets a 5 from us, but with that added ability to kind of really customize your people and using all the different powers, there are a few different things you're going to experience every time you play. And that's as bare bones as an example as we can give. So as you see from our scores, we both gave it 6s. Really not much more to talk about. One day when this game no longer has server support, you can still play against bots and play locally, but you probably won't want to. As far as beer, you know what? Let me just add 2 more for Jim and I, because we're being pretty goddamn nice this game compared to how most people blast the shit out of it. Overall, Jim and I, yes, I think we are being a little more fair with this game because diehard Shadowrun fans really just hated this game. And we don't really get it, but hey, we weren't as involved with the whole Shadowrun universe as deeply as some others, so I'm not going to sit here and try and say they were in the wrong or not. But regardless, this is a pretty standard first-person shooter.
So average!
With some interesting, unique features set in a universe that we were like, oh, that would be a really cool idea. It just had so much potential, and it let a lot of people down. Nowadays, you can purchase it for balls cheap, so if you even have the slightest interest, it might be worth your time. As you see from our scores, I gave it a 6, Jim gave it a 5. It's just really average. I might have given it a few more points because I am a little more lenient against games that, shit, even if you're just playing against a bunch of bots, I can find some mild amusement there. When we combine all of our scores together, it rounds out to a 5.9, which is pretty fair for us. Considering from a technical standpoint, this game doesn't have a ton of flaws. It's just so goddamn blah. When it comes to the beer pairing, I'm going to choose the Sierra Nevada Nooner Pilsner. Now, for most people that know Pilsners know it's an easy drinking beer. This one's just slightly more hoppy, so some people will appreciate it and some people won't, much like this game. Either way, it's a great session beer, so try it out with a game that most people will never give a chance to. And remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly. As always, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, or better yet, why not subscribe? Till next time, guys, cheers.